Welcome to the Wealthy Artist Podcast. And I'm your host, Sarah Clanton.
And I'm Wilson Harwood. And we're talking about how to develop your wealth,
enjoy financial freedom,
enjoy artistic freedom,
and live the life you've always imagined. Well, welcome to the show.
All right.
Yeah, welcome. We're in it.
We're in it. It's happening. We're recording. Things are...
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to introduce Michael, Sarah?
Well, sure. Well, Michael... Well, yeah. Where do we start here? Michael's my lawyer. And for certain adventures we've had in the musical kind in the past. And yeah, I just thought it was so great to catch up with you the other day on the phone when I sent you something to look at. And you've started a new business, and we connected actually through the VPLA many years ago when I first, 7 years ago, I guess.
Something maybe like that.
Maybe 5. I don't know. A couple years between moving here and after that. And anyway, but we're both cello players, and so we kind of bonded on that. And yeah, I don't know. And Wilson, you met Michael completely differently.
Through the same exact way, but not through you.
Right. And we didn't realize that
It's so crazy. Yeah. So yeah, my co-writer Claire and I, we did the VPLA as well. And then we ended up meeting you, and I've used Michael as my lawyer for a couple different things. And so today on the podcast, we're hoping that if you guys have ever thought about hiring a lawyer, or maybe you have, and
maybe it sounds really scary. You're like, what the fuck? Why do you need a lawyer?
Yeah. So hopefully Michael can clear all that up for you guys and learn a bunch of new cool things about how to protect yourself and your business and grow and flourish with your lawyer. Yeah. So Michael, do you want to just tell us a little backstory about how
story?
I didn't even know you played cello. I kind of remembered that you played music, but I was like, no way that it was cello.
Well, and there's one other little interesting wrinkle there. So Sarah and I both have Colorado connections as well.
That's right.
And me too.
Cellist from Colorado, it's that's not a super norm type of thing, right?
No.
Right.
You don't see that very often, and especially here in Nashville. So the fact that we've got a couple people with really similar backgrounds all in the same place connected, it's it feels a little faded, right?
Yeah, totally. For sure.
It's pretty awesome.
But yeah, so I started out in the business as a touring and recording artist. Actually, on the classical side, I was studying cello and doing the symphony and quartet and all the good stuff that comes in that world, and decided I wanted to test the waters of something new. So started touring and recording sort of Americana alternative styles of music, and saw a great deal of success doing that. And then eventually decided that being on the road and recording in the studio full time wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do long term. So I made the decision to go to law school. Came out here to Tennessee to do that, and established myself as an entertainment lawyer when I admit to it. I always make that caveat. Lawyers aren't always the most popular people in the room, but it's worked out really well for me, and I've had some amazing opportunities to represent some really, really cool artists and producers and labels and publishing companies and everything else you can imagine in this business, on both sides of the litigation and transactional side. A lot of people think lawyers are, just lawyers, right? They do a little bit of everything, but you'll find that most lawyers are fairly specialized, either on litigation, which is sort of you go into court and you sue somebody or you defend yourself against a lawsuit, whatever it is. And then on the transactional side, it's what you think of more of in the entertainment space, contracts and record deal negotiations, that sort of thing. So it's interesting to have somebody on both sides of that's done it all, I guess, in this space. And I like to think that it makes me a little more valuable in some situations, maybe less valuable in other situations, but for good or ill, that's how I got here. And at the moment, I am largely focusing my practice on the transactional side of the business, and have for the last few years. I recently, as of this year, launched my own firm, Ransom Legal, which has sort of grown very, very quickly to the point where what started out as sort of a leap of faith has turned into a very, very good and very quickly growing business, to the point where I'm actually looking at bringing on some additional help to carry that load for me. And at the same time, I've managed to keep my fingers in the music business a little bit, not playing or recording nearly as much as I was, but every once in a while I'll get out there and do something fun, whether it's on my own or whether it's with my siblings, who we toured and recorded under the name The Ransom Notes, because why not? So yeah, it's that's just a little bit of my background, and I'd love to get into specific topics, legal things, other things, whatever those are, here with you guys today. But as far as jumping off point, I think we've left the cliff.
Yeah, and Sarah told me today that you started your own practice, but when I had met you, you were working underneath, I think 2 different firms. Both times I met with you. One was with one firm and then another firm. So that's awesome that you are now an entrepreneur. Welcome to the club.
Yeah. It's a little bit scary, and you guys know this, right? Because there's a lot of security in having a paycheck every month and having a 9-to-5 job, whatever that is. But the music industry was built by people, and it's littered with people who have taken that leap of faith. And for me, it seemed like the logical progression from where I was to where I wanted to be. And this seemed like the right time to do it. And so far it's exceeded my best estimation of what success could possibly look like. So
I love that.
That's awesome.
I love that you're just you're like, wait, all these people have been taking leaps of faith, and look how great they've done. You just you're normalizing taking a leap of faith. And I think that that's super awesome. Like, if they can do it, I can do it. So that's super cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. And the fact that, we loved working with you. I know Sarah loved working with you. And I think a lot of it, as people will hear on the podcast, is just Michael's a good guy. And, that is a huge part of business, is just coming across as a genuine person and your stuff too. So I think we were going to get into the legal stuff on here a little bit to help people out.
Why we need to know legal stuff.
Why? Yeah, it's not all fun and games all the time, unfortunately.
Well, this is trying to I think what's cool about it is having your ducks in a row can make it more fun.
Right. That's a great point.
No, and I love it, because you say it's not always fun, but I like to think that if it's just a bunch of musicians or recovering musicians, as I like to say, talking about stuff, it doesn't always feel like a nasty topic, and you can actually work through some of these issues and really get down to some of the business side of this without having it feel overwhelming or like it's something that's such a negative part of your day. Obviously nobody wants to talk about partnership agreements or trademarks or anything like that, but there's a way to do it in context that I think really makes it feel real for artists. And if you can do that, it really is a benefit, I think, to them.
Clarifying expectations is so huge, because we can't read each other's minds. So getting it on paper and having someone who can, come to the table with a good spirit about it, So what is the most common thing? Is there a most common thing that artists come to you with what they're dealing with? Oh no, I didn't do this thing. Help me.
Sure. So I'm going to premise the conversation going forward on none of this is legal advice per se. My professors, from years ago in law school, they'd be proud of me in this moment. So with that being said, there's not really a single thing that people come to me looking for more than the other. And I think that's because, as much as people like to think the music industry, at least on the business side, is cut and dried, sort of cookie cutter, one size fits all, it's not at all. And that's an approach that I've tried to factor into my practice every day. And that's that there really is not any 2 deals or any 2 artists that are going to look exactly the same. Issues that one artist might face are things that may never become an issue for another artist or another producer or whoever it is that I'm representing in the moment. So I think that's an important thing. If you take nothing else away, it's that if anybody tells you things are one size fits all, or this is how everybody does it, they may be right in some regards, but as far as every deal or every situation fitting every artist, that's just not true and shouldn't be true, because you and your agreements should be as unique as the music and the people that are looking to enter into those agreements. So I think that's a really important takeaway for people in the creative space, is that it's okay to be unique, and it's okay to push back on some of these things, even though they may sound like standard deal points or standard agreements. That being said, some of the things that I see a lot of are entity formations, and a lot of people don't think, in the entertainment space, that sort of corporate work would factor in heavily, but it really does. I mean, there's questions of, should your business be an LLC or should it be a C corporation? Should you set up a touring company? Should you have your own record label? Should you have your own publishing company? And how do you hold all of those assets? Are they held in one company? Do you spread them out to defer liability? So that entity formation and sort of business creation is a big pile of what I deal with. Then you've got sort of rights protection. That's copyrights, trademarks, things like that. And whether that's somebody that comes to me and says, hey, somebody stole my song and we need to sue them to get those rights back and make sure everybody knows that was my song, or whether it's somebody saying, hey, I've got this really cool logo and I need to go file a trademark with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office so that I can protect that logo from other people that are trying to use it in the future. That's a really important bundle, or a series of sticks in the bundle of rights that an artist will have. And it's something that probably not everybody thinks about as much as some of the other things, but one that's really, really important, because you never know what you have or what you should have done to protect that thing until somebody's already taken it most of the time. So you can be sort of proactive in digging into those issues. It can be really, really beneficial in the long term. Another thing that I see a lot of is, and this is probably 50% of my practice, is somebody that comes to me with an agreement in hand, or that's in the process of trying to get an agreement, whether that's with a record label or a publishing company or somebody that's going to do sync plugging or whatever it may be. They've already got some sort of entertainment industry, and I'll use that term really broadly, some sort of entertainment industry agreement. In fact, that's how both of you guys came into my life. You've had an agreement with a third party that you wanted somebody to look at to make sure that your rights were adequately represented and that there wasn't any gotcha language in there that would cause a headache in the back on the back end. So that's something that I do a lot of, and whether that's a producer agreement on either side, whether that's the artist or the producer, whether that's a publishing agreement with a major publisher or an independent publisher, or somebody that's trying to sub-license their work through, for an administration type of deal, whatever that is. I see a lot of those types of agreements as well. And, that's, like I said, probably a 50% of my practice is deals that are already either in the works, where somebody said, okay, I need, somebody in my corner as I'm going into this negotiation and this drafting process. So for me, that's something I see a lot of. And then, you get random things here and there. Sometimes it'll be, somebody says, hey, I, was the photographer for, X famous, celebrity, and somebody's putting my pictures on t-shirts and selling them. I need to get that taken down. Or I'll have somebody that will come to me and say, hey, I had some random thing occur, and, can you help me figure out? And some of the time I can help with those things. And some of the time it's something that's well outside my wheelhouse, whether that's a tax issue, or, hey, I got picked up at the bars last night, need you to come into court and figure out how I can, get somebody to bail me out. And in those situations, I love being an advocate for my clients, but there are limitations to what I feel qualified to do. And I think that's an important thing to remember when you're dealing with a lawyer, is that nobody can be great at everything. And most people have a narrow practice, whether that's family law, where they help people with their divorces and, marital asset division, whatever that may be, or somebody that does wills and trusts, or somebody that represents, people that are accused of crimes, whatever it is. You don't see them doing 15 things. Most of the time, it's fairly narrowly tailored, or at least, largely narrowly tailored to a very specific set of or part of the law, and that's for a reason. It's because if you want to have the best on your team, you have to have somebody that really knows that area of the law at a granular level, so that they can go in and really, represent you to the greatest to their greatest ability. And for me, that's where I try to draw the line. And I tell my clients that up front, like, hey, these are the things I can't do for you. I mean, could I, if push came to shove, sure. Somebody that's been to law school probably is better equipped to go into court and argue something than somebody who hasn't been to law school. But somebody that, like myself, who is largely in the transactional entertainment space, going into court and trying to argue down your DUI is probably not who you want.
Not gonna work out.
I'm not your guy.
I wanted to jump in real quick because it kind of goes the opposite way too, more often, I think, in the music space, which is that, and I've been actually on this side of it where, you have some sort of lawyer in the family or a family friend who's a lawyer, and you're like, let's just run the contract by them. And they've never done a music contract in their life, but they can generally read contracts. But I would warn all of you artists listening that, like, sure, do it, but maybe also hire the lawyer. I mean, if your family friend, yeah, definitely also. Because your family friend can help you understand it, that can be useful. But the thing that I've found is that someone like Michael will know what's a fair deal, whereas other lawyers wouldn't know what standard practice in the industry is. Is that correct, Michael?
That's a really good way to put it. And the other thing is, and again, you both have seen this at some level, I think. There are a lot of people, especially in Nashville or in entertainment, quote unquote, towns, that they think they know what they're doing when they're the ones putting the agreement together. So the quote unquote label, the quote unquote publisher, the person that is trying to engage your services, oftentimes will have done the agreement themselves as well, and they'll have cobbled it together from 10 different things they found on the internet, and they'll put some words in there that sound pretty good, and lo and behold, it's actually a really, really poorly done agreement that can expose you to a lot of liability on the back end, that can lead to a lot of confusion if there's ever a disagreement stemming from that piece of paper. And the last thing you ever want is to go into court 5 years from now and say, hey, we agreed to something, and this side says this is what we agreed to, but that's not what I thought we were agreeing to. But the contract is so ambiguous and convoluted that nobody actually knows what it says. So we're just going to put it in the hands of a judge or jury to decide what we actually agreed to. The idea behind an agreement is, let's put out everything that we could possibly think of that could come up in the terms of our relationship, lay it out in an agreement, make sure everybody understands, or at least has a chance to give input on what those things are. And, then we all agree to abide by it. And that's the idea. I mean, and it may sound overly simplistic to put a contract in those terms, but it really is. It's a meeting of the minds. It's where two people who have very clear ideas about what they think they're doing, and it's their chance to spell it out so that a third party can come in, read it, and say, yeah, this is what these two people intended to do. And these are the rights that were given up or granted under that agreement. These are the obligations that were imposed on one side or the other. And we can look at that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, or never, hopefully, if the agreement goes, the way it's supposed to, and the relationship goes the way it's supposed to. But God forbid that it doesn't, and then you end up looking into it, and you want somebody down the road to be able to look at that piece of paper and say, this is what the parties intended, clearly, convincingly. And so going back to my point, when somebody that doesn't know what they're doing and isn't a lawyer kind of pastes all these things together and makes their own agreement, you're running just as much of a risk as going into a negotiation against the best entertainment attorney in the world by yourself. Why? Because you're running the risk that agreement says a ton of things that make no sense and just leave everybody confused as to what the parties intended or were agreeing to. And it's never a position you want to be in. So I always advocate for people having a lawyer, and that's not just because I am one. In fact, I tell people all the time, when they come to me and ask me to try and help them with whatever their situation is. I'm so convinced and believe so strongly in having a lawyer advocate for you on that front end so that you can avoid all those issues and so you can get the most fair deal possible, that I will, even if that's not me, I'll go help you find someone that can help you, because I would rather lose a client or a potential client over, whatever the issue is. They couldn't afford to pay me. They, didn't like the vibe that I was giving off. They felt like they would offend somebody else if they didn't hire that person's lawyer, whatever it is. It's more important to me that those people get good representation than it is that I am that representation. So for me, it's just something that I truly hope people take away from this and any conversation that they have with me is, there is a reason for lawyers. We're here to help. And in my case, it's sort of my passion, driven by where I come from, which is the music business, and a desire to help other artists not end up in a bad situation, whether it's, a month from now, a year from now, 10 years from now, whenever it is, where they've lost their rights or they're locked into a bad contract, or they are stuck, unable to pursue their career and just in a place where they don't even want to at times because of what they've been through with a bad relationship or a bad agreement. So for me, it's really, really important that, I'm able to be a resource to, any artist that walks up to me and asks the question or asks for some help. And hopefully it ends up being a benefit to them, because like I said, there's a lot of unscrupulous people out there, especially in this business. And, your best defense against that is somebody that, is what to look for.
And it's good to think about like how if you can't afford a lawyer, if you're thinking that way, there are places like the VPLA where you can find pro bono law advice for what you're going through to get you started. But you're actually like any money that you spend is actually saving you money. Just like you're talking about, like you don't want to have to go through this like in years ahead. And also like, I know this is going to sound terribly like just maybe negative, but like what do bands do? Every band breaks up. So like that's just what happens. One day your band's not going to be a band anymore, and however that or whatever the agreements shift and change. And so just getting all that stuff like done on the like not assuming everything's just going to be rainbows and sunshine is like not a terrible attitude to have. And it is totally possible to stand up for yourself and like, yes, I deserve having a lawyer and great representation. I think that's another place that we can remind our listeners, the power is within you, go empower yourself to go to those agreements to the table with like, hey, this is, I got support, and that's also going to show your team how serious you take it, and that you also like want all these expectations to be clear. Yeah, I think it can just only better the relationship. Really, it'll show you if it won't.
Yeah, so true. And like Michael, like the last contract we did, I learned a good lesson there, because it was really interesting. Sometimes paying the money to learn that it's a bad contract is worth it. So like, it's a weird situation where you like kind of go through a contract, and we did this thing where it was like, oh man, this is really written poorly and not making a lot of sense. I'm not sure I think you had asked me, you're like, do you really want to try to work this out or not? And I don't want to mention anyone who was involved in this, but it was, in the end, I was like, I should have probably just said, nah, let's just drop it, and it was really awesome to have Michael's professional opinion being like, hey man, this is like not at the level where you probably even want to be. And in retrospect, looking back, and I'm like, I'm glad I'm not in that contract. And if I hadn't hired a lawyer, I would have never known. I would have probably just read through it, been like, it looks all right. I don't know.
Well, and that's just your job,
right?
Yeah, there's all those magic words or like
magic words. I love that. But that's why we do we all can't do everything, right? Like you said, Michael. Even lawyers we all have like what we specifically do, and so like as artists, like our job's not to look at contracts.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe. I mean,
and look at it. That's a really, really good point, Wilson. It's that, the bad deals. And it's something I tell my clients all the time, even ones where, and again, it's a weird subject for a lot of people. I really welcome conversations about like attorneys' fees and how people get paid or costs and things like that, because I think it's really important for my clients to be able to plan that. I've been in those shoes, and I know where, hey, the next gig I'm going to play at this bar in, St. Louis as I'm driving home is, gas money to get there, right? I understand the realities of this business, and the fact that hiring a lawyer, from just a purely financial standpoint, can seem daunting, if not insurmountable. And so I always have this conversation up front, and I just talk with my clients about what that financial situation looks like, and the fact that I always will try to find a way to work with them rather than say, okay, X number of dollars every hour, and every time I pick up the phone, I charge you for this, and every email I send costs you this much. I don't think my clients are well served in that situation. So what I've tried to do is have really open, upfront communication on the topic of costs and fees and things like that, because I think that it benefits everybody in the relationship, and it allows the artist to plan a little bit, because I would rather have somebody that understands what they're doing and figure out a way to make it work than somebody that walks away because they feel like they don't know what that's going to look like, and they're sitting there in fear of getting a bill at the end of the month and having to decide between paying rent or paying their lawyer. And I never want to be in that situation. But to the point that I'm trying to make is that occasionally I'll do representations of my clients where it's completely based upon what deal comes in the door. Contingency is what we kind of call it in the legal space. And even those clients that I have a contingency where it might be a year or two before I get a paycheck, but I'm working for those people, I've told those people to walk away from deals, even though that's my chance to get paid, right? That's me saying I've done a year of work, 2 years of work sometimes, and haven't gotten a paycheck for that. If it's not the right deal, I will still tell those people to walk away from it, because at the end of the day, I never want somebody coming back and saying, hey, you told me to do this deal, and having any question about what my reason for being in this role and in the room advocating for my clients is. I want them to understand that, no, I'm here for you guys. I'm here to represent your interests. I'm here to make this as good as we can make it for you. Because and this is going to sound terrible, but for me, the ultimate gratification in this is not getting that paycheck. It's not going out and saying, hey, my client won this award or whatever it is. It's going on and turning on the radio when I'm driving down the road at 5 a.m. or 5 p.m. or whenever it may be, and hearing a song come on the radio by an artist that I signed them to a record deal and help them negotiate that process and get to a point where that music could come to life and where it's actually able to exist and be enjoyed by people out there. And that for me is the ultimate gratification. That's why I do what I do, right? And it was so funny, actually. Christmas this past year, I was in Colorado, and not at Christmas, but around Christmas last year, and turned on the radio, and a band that I had represented for years and worked really, really hard for, their song comes on the radio, and I was just like, man, this made it worth it. And this was a tough year with COVID, and this was this, that, and the other thing, but man, in that moment, that 3 to 5 minutes when you're just hearing that song, like, this is what it's about, right? And awesome. I've represented everybody from very small artists that are doing their first publishing deal up to major touring acts, and I get the same gratification when I hear a song the starting out writer that I'm working with puts out and gets cut by somebody, and all the way up to major stadium tours that are sold out with 20,000 people sitting there and watching my artist perform in that situation. It's the same level of gratification for me, because at the end of the day, it all helped that creativity come to life. So I think it's really important that if you are looking for a lawyer and if you are having conversations with a lawyer, be upfront about, and ask questions about, some of the business side of it as it relates to you and your lawyer, but also be sensitive to the fact that if that person's not in it for the right reason, if they're out there just trying to collect a paycheck, evaluate whether that's the type of relationship you want with your lawyer. Because there are people that'll come in, they'll do your deal, they'll do a great job, and you won't talk to them again for 3 years or 5 years or till you have the next deal. Mm-hmm. Me, I love being involved in my artists' careers. I love being there at the first deal. I want to be there at the last deal they do. I want to have them hit me up and say, hey man, we're touring through Nashville. You want to come out to the show? There's a couple tickets waiting for you at Will Call. I want that to be part of the process and part of the team. And I think that's a mentality that really hits home the concept for me of what a lawyer is and our role in representing artists is part of a team. And people think about managers. They think about, the guy.
Think about the lawyers.
Exactly. But at the end of the day, it's one of those things where if you can find the right people on your team, and that, I like to think includes a lawyer, you'll probably have far better chances of success in this business, and I'll guarantee you better odds of not ending up in a very regrettable situation with regrettable people than if you didn't have that person in your corner.
I'd love to speak to you've gone from, you've built this business that at the beginning of your career, you probably didn't imagine that you were going to have. And now you're, you have your own practice and all this. And the way that I hear you speak about your business, I think is really resonating with me because Wilson and I have just been reading Amanda Francis's book, Rich as Fuck. And there's this vibe that comes with success that is most authentic and genuine when you are in it for, quote, the right reasons. When you're in the flow of what is, you okay, I feel really good serving artists in this way. And that feel good alone, you took the leap of faith and trusted that that feeling will serve and that energy will come back to you in form of a paycheck. And you can get that feeling like you're talking about with people you're going to work with. Do they have that feeling? And that being in alignment with that is really important. And I think that's something that, Wilson and I were literally talking about before you hopped on here. We're talking about getting in alignment with that feeling and how we can stay here. And it's a great book. And I think that's a great example, the way you're talking about your own practice. Oh my gosh, it excites me to hear this music on the radio. And that excites us as artists to hear that people on our team get excited about the little things too. Because, yeah. Well, I mean, it's not a little thing. It's a huge thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how do you think... what should artists ask, potential music lawyers that they're looking into? What should they look for? What are they, let's say there's some of our listeners that are like, man, I have this contract, or man, I have this situation. How should they even start finding a lawyer? What would you recommend?
Well, it's kind of like anything in this day and age. I think if you, go over to Google and type in your city and what you're looking for, you'll find...
Hashtag entertainment lawyer.
Yeah. Like our last guest said.
Yeah.
There you go. Exactly. You can find somebody that way. And I encourage people not to jump into a relationship with the first person they come across. And again, a lot of times it's going to be either somebody you found on the internet or I don't know that many people are using phone books these days, but maybe they are, and maybe there's lawyers in there that do this type of work. I don't know. But yeah, they're either going to find it there or it's going to be a referral from somebody they know. But my takeaway is always, just because it worked for somebody else, just because somebody has a good website, whatever it is, doesn't mean it's going to work for you. So I think it's really important to, not only reach out to that person, whether that's email, whether that's a phone call, whether it's somebody you met at a writer's round, whoever it is, reach out to them and have some honest conversations. I think that's the first step. Mm-hmm. Really have a good conversation with them. And I like to think about, their philosophy about everything, whether it's practicing law or creating music, just get a vibe, because at the end of the day, you can be a great lawyer, but if you can't connect with that person, mm-hmm. you're not necessarily going to have a great relationship. And again, not every artist and not every lawyer are looking to have a long-term relationship. They may just be looking to do a business transaction, right? Where you bring the agreement, I review the agreement, and that's the extent of our relationship. But if you're truly interested in bringing somebody into a team and having somebody that's going to be in your corner for the long term, I encourage people to have those conversations and get a sense of who that lawyer is as a person and what their philosophy on practicing law is. And just even if that's a 5-minute conversation, you can tell a lot about the relationship and the potential for longevity just from that 5 minutes. So that's a big part of it. And then just talking to them and seeing, does this person possess the skills that I need from my lawyer, or is this somebody that does a bunch of different things, and also does entertainment law, is trying to break into that space, or is a brand new lawyer that's never seen an agreement before. Those are all relevant things, because this is no knock on new lawyers, but there's something that comes with experience and seeing 100 agreements, 1,000 agreements, whatever it is, because you'll know what to look for. You'll be able to do it much faster and more cost effectively, and probably more reliably than somebody that graduated law school last week. Again, not a knock on new lawyers, but it's very difficult to have the same skill set as somebody that's been doing this for a while right out of the gate. So that's something to look at. And then, like I said, just talk to them about, hey, what's the fee structure look like? Because at the end of the day, this is a business, and artists are doing deals so that they get paid, and lawyers are reviewing those deals because they need to get paid. So have a conversation about what those costs are. Try and be upfront if there's limitations on what you can do, and ask the lawyer, what type of fee structure they propose for the relationship. Because there are deals where a company, the third party you're doing a deal with, will pay your legal fees, and that may alleviate those concerns. And if that's something where the lawyer has done 10 deals with the person that or the company that you're trying to do a deal with, they may be like, oh yeah, they pay the bill every single time, don't worry about it, we'll that'll be taken care of for you. It may be something where they propose some really manageable fee structure, and it may be something where their position is, hey, this is what I do, and I don't bend. And that's just not something that works for the artist. But again, I think that upfront communication is really important for the artist and the lawyer relationship, because it gets you started on a really honest footing. And I think it allows you to progress that relationship much more smoothly than you could without some of those conversations. So as with anything, you wouldn't go buy a car without doing some research. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't, buy a car without test driving it and talking to a salesman. If it's a used car, you wouldn't buy the car without talking to your mechanic, whatever it is. Those are all conversations that you would have normally with someone. Why wouldn't you have those conversations with your lawyer before you hire someone that may very well hold the next, 5 years of your life in the palm of their hands?
Yeah. That's intense.
Excuse me.
That's a good way to put it.
So intense I sneezed.
Bless you. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Oh, man, totally. And what's like the first kind of contract someone would bring or agreement? What is, because we may have like some very like fresh new artists here, and it's like, well, I don't need a lawyer yet. Or like, how do you know when you need a lawyer?
That's a good question. And there's some people that would say never, and some people that would say day one, depending on your view of lawyers. But I like to think it's when, it's as early as possible, because there are some things that you can do to protect yourself, whether it's, like I said, setting up an LLC to make sure that your assets are held. Or this is an example I use whenever I teach or talk with students, right? What happens if you got three guys that are really, really talented, a guy that's got a drum kit, a guy that's got a bass, and a guy that's got a guitar, right? They get together in their parents' garage and start playing music, and, they're having a great time. And then the restaurant down the street asks them to come play, for their Friday night entertainment. Well, guess what? You have three people who are engaged in the pursuit of making money. Under Tennessee law, you've just formed a general partnership. And what happens if 2 weeks, a week after you play that show at the local restaurant, you decide to break up? Well, that situation's maybe not as messy as somebody breaking up 2 years or 20 years down the road. But the fact of the matter is, there are rights and obligations that come with being in a partnership that you maybe didn't think about when you guys just got together in the garage and said, hey, this is cool, let's form a band. So it could be as early as the first note you guys play, or the first show that you book, when you're getting ready to go out and make money on this. So having
an agreement between, say, bandmates first.
Correct.
Before you even go out and like have an agreement with a gig, or to have a gig, at a restaurant.
Exactly. So sort of foundational things for you. And that could
like
be
who plays what roles.
And think about, if you guys get a loan from one of the guy's parents, right? You get a $500 loan, and they go out and buy amps and mics and everything that they would need to go put on the show and go on the road. Who's obligated to pay that money back? Who owns those assets that you bought with that money?
Been there before.
Right. So
Yeah.
it's
and then I was like, wait a minute, I didn't even think about all this.
it's a
Like my
really
first
common
band.
situation. Now, 9 times out of 10, is it going to blow up and have a situation where there's enough assets or money or personality involved at the end to require you to, go to court over who owns what? Probably not. I mean,
But
that's
maybe
just
later in another relationship, and you'll need to have learned it somehow.
No, that's the thing. I mean,
Yeah.
there are some great bands and duos and everything else out there in history that have ended badly. Let's be honest, right? Whether it's the Beatles or Simon Garfunkel or whoever else it might be, there are bands and acts that have ended badly. And with the way the law is set up, it leaves uncertainty if you don't have something in place. So that's one example of doing some foundational work. Another one is, having an LLC. And that could be something as simple as, hey, I don't want to sign contracts in my own name, because if somebody ever sued me for whatever that contract is covering, I don't want my personal assets to be on the line if I get found guilty of doing whatever it is they say that I did. Having an LLC is a way to somewhat protect yourself from liability in that situation, or protect your assets from liability in that situation. So some of those foundational things, and like I said earlier, copyright or trademark, those are rights that, they affix based on use, they affix based on creation under statutory law here in the US, but there are formalities, with registrations and different things you can and oftentimes should take to protect those things that allow you down the road, whether that's 5 months or 5 years, to go in and assert your ownership of that thing. And at the end of the day, there's value to creativity. And I think that's something that you guys talk about a lot on this podcast, but it's also something that I think artists really need to realize is your services have value. Just because you have to play some open mics or play for tips or whatever it is, doesn't mean what you're doing is not valuable. It's creating something that other people get to experience, and that experience has value. And so protecting things that have value may seem like a far-fetched down the road type of conversation, but I think it's never too early to have those conversations, to think through what value your services and sometimes even goods may have, and your creativity has in this space, and look to protect it to the greatest extent you possibly can.
I love it. I love it. Yes.
I love it too.
Well, where can people find you, Michael? If they want to call you and they need your help, where can they find you? What's the easiest way
I
to
always
get in touch?
joke, and I'm like, I'm everywhere. You can find me anywhere, anytime, right? Thanks to the world wide. No, I'm around. I've got plenty of ways to find me. I mean, the easiest is to shoot me an email. My email is Michael, Michael @ransom, RANSOM, just like kidnapping money. I always like to tell people that. So it's Michael @ransom-legal.com, and just shoot me an email. Say, hey, I was on listening with you and Sarah and Wilson, and sounded like something that might be a good conversation for us to have. Would you, be willing to talk, or something like that? I mean, at the end of the day, I never shy away from a good conversation, and I tell people that all the time. Is even if this is an adversarial situation, I do this all the time. I'll call up the other side's lawyer, in a dispute, and I'll say, like, look, I don't know what's going on yet. I'm not going to sit here and puff up my chest and say my guy's right and yours is wrong. I'm like, let's have a conversation. And that's true with my new clients. That's true with my old clients. Let's talk. Let's figure out, do you need a lawyer? Is it something I can help with? Is it a relationship that'll be mutually beneficial? And if the answer is yes, let's go. And if not, if there's something that I can steer you in the right direction on, I'll do it and send you on your way. And if it's just something where there's not a need, I'll tell you that. And maybe somewhere down the road when there is a need, you'll come back.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Excuse me.
Perfect.
This is so awesome. My brain is just like, I love it. So excited. We'll make sure to put your email in the show notes below. Make sure if you're listening to subscribe, write a review, leave us some stars. And we're on YouTube. So if you want to see our smiling, shiny faces, you can follow us on the YouTubes and all that fun stuff. And we have new episodes every Monday. and we couldn't do it without you all. So thank you for being here. Thank you for believing in yourself enough to come and listen. Thank you, Michael, for being on the side of empowering the artist. I really do appreciate you and all you've done for me and all the artists out there. So thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, and best of luck with the rest of your day and with continued success for the show. Have enjoyed listening so far and look forward to future episodes. And if there's anything either you guys ever need, just feel free to reach out.
Thanks, man.
Will do. Woo!